when we shift through the history of the international pigeon sport, looking for exceptional breeding lines, for exceptional stock pigeons, for the origin of a super pedigree. You will notice that numerous current top lines can be traced back to just a few specific stock pigeons from a very distant past. The same names crop up time and again. In the long distance and especially the extreme overnight long distance, one inevitably comes across the time-honored Jan Arden pigeons, and the old Steenberg's pedigree. Mainly jointly created by the master hand of the late Pied de Weerd. This was often combined with a dose of Tournier pigeons, to keep the necessary speed in these overnighters. For the middle distance and the one-day long distance, the majority of the current top colonies are still based on the input of pigeons from Jansen Arendong, and Louis Van Loon from the Belgian Poppel. The man of few words, but great deeds, that was the Belgian craftsman Louis Van Loon. Famous because of his excellent race results, in fact he raced so well, and he was not allowed to race anywhere, he was shut out. Legendary because his pigeons, beginning in the 80s, gave the pigeon sport an entirely new vision. Besides speed, the Van Loon-pigeons proved to possess an unheard-of determination and stamina. The Van Loon-pigeons also showed that they made excellent crossing material with any of the other inbred strains, but especially with the Jansen pigeons. As a result, the Van Loon strain grew to be one of the most influential strains in the history of the racing pigeon sport. Louis Van Loon in his younger years had already mastered the art of searching for and breeding of top pigeons. Having an excellent eye for class, he assembled top pigeons from local lofts and from them forged his own strain. And with them, flew the entire area under the table. When he was no longer welcome anywhere on the short distance and middle distance races, Louis decided to enter his blue wonder pigeons in the Dagfond one-day long distance races. This quickly resulted in provincial and national victories. Gerard Koopman personally introduced the Van Loon-pigeons to the Netherlands. As a young pigeon enthusiast, he became a close friend of the transport truck driver, obtained his pigeons and followed his advice, and began his period of great success. Top performances which didn't escape the watchful eye of the outside world, and sent many fanciers on a pilgrimage to Poppel, looking for reinforcements, which they hoped to found, and indeed did find in the top-class Louis Van Loon. The successes were in keeping. Today a heap of fanciers owed their successes to the introduction of these Louis Van Loon pigeons into their colony, both at home and abroad. Let us take a closer look at a few super pigeons that stem from these Van Loon pigeons. Don Leo. NL 1-516-2009. 4th National Ace Pigeon one-day long distance NPO 2004, 2nd Mantlukan against 1,972 pigeons, 4th NPO Mantlukan against 11,330 pigeons, 6th NPO La Souterraine 7,923 pigeons, 5th Argentin 1,627 pigeons, 28th NPO Argentin against 8,916 pigeons, and 18th Leon against 5,743 pigeons. Directly developed into a real visionary in the breeding loft and bred multiple winners. Fabio. NL 1-414-0734. Full brother of Don Leo, who in his short career won amongst other things, 26th National NPO Mantlukan 11,330 pigeons, 27th National NPO Mantlukan 8,151 pigeons, 50th National NPO Souterraine 6,555 pigeons, and 89th National NPO Mantlukan against 5,178 pigeons. Chicago. B93 623 4444. Chicago is a direct Louis Van Loon, and son of the Rudogger 840-87, won first Provincial and National La Souterraine 1990, cross granddaughter, first National La Souterraine 229-90 from Louis Van Loon. Chicago is a real top breeder, the likes of which are few. He is also the father and grandfather of super racers and super breeders. Silver Shadow. NL 94-138-0745. A grandson of the super breeding couple Louis Cross Suzanne via their son Rominger 972-88, Cross mother Silver Shadow 819-87, out brother Louis cross sister Alana or a daughter of Louis cross Suzanne. Before growing to be a real top breeder, he won first attempts against 6,337 pigeons, first pair on against 2,646 pigeons, first attempts against 918 pigeons, second sends against 2,305 pigeons, and second Pont St. Maxence against 1,298 pigeons. Wonder Pigeon Che. NL4 1560084. A figurehead in the Camp lofts. A real primus, one of the greatest pigeons ever in the Camp lofts. He comes from a crossing Camp Jansen cross Van Loon. This Che put together a magisterial honors list with absolute toppers so as, first National NPO Orleans against 14,285 pigeons, first heiress against 9,641 pigeons, 9th NPO Orleans against 18,184 pigeons, and 9th Bourgs against 1,834 pigeons. Louis Van Loon was born in Poppel, a village in Belgium. From a modest family, he was a truck driver for a local factory and lived with his wife and children. A pigeon fancier since he was in school, his father was his main teacher. This is because in his family there was a great tradition and they competed with pigeons. When he became independent, the Van Loon line began to develop. He spent all his free time in the loft every day of the year. His secret? Dedication and the dream to win. His results are already part of history and place him as one of the greatest competitors of all time in Belgium. For many years he was the terror of the whole area. Despite his success, Van Loon never ceased to be a very humble person, who never bragged about his achievements. Van Loon is an advocate of winners breeding winners. He always competed during the whole campaign with 20 male widowers. Each week he used to send no more than 12 to the competition and he used to win all the prizes at stake. In his campaign during these years he only entered a few long-distance pigeons, but never crossing them with his base line. One of the bunch of references, Philippe Frederick of Red in Belgium. The Belgian king of the sprint, so as he is sometimes called. The colony of Philippe is, not unjustly, seen as one of the biggest branches Louis Van Loon-pigeons. Philippe more or less had the privilege of dipping into the golden breeding well of the grandmaster from Poppel. Over the years 10 Van Loon-pigeons moved from the rich breeding loft in Poppel to the Frederick lofts. Philippe had the privilege of being allowed to select the best for himself, for his own breeding source. No wonder that his collection of Van Loon pigeons are considered as more or less the greatest collection Van Loon blood at the moment. A collection that partly lies at the basis of the magnificent performances that Philippe Frederick has achieved over the years. Thank you for watching. Until next time.